19 years of patience. He had the container idea at 24. He waited until 43 to use it, deliberately, strategically. Not fear, leverage. The patent he gave away. He didn't give away the container idea. He insisted the technology to be made available to the entire industry, including all his competitors. It was a trap they walked into willingly.
Malcolm McLean was born in 1913 into a world of scarcity. His father, a farmer, worked land he didn't own. His mother raised 7 children on almost nothing. The lesson Malcolm learned before he could read was this: time wasted is money lost. Vast tobacco fields stretch to a pale horizon. A boy, Malcolm Purcell McLean, maybe 7 years old, works alongside sharecroppers in the pre-dawn light. His hands are cracked. His boots are thin. We see what poverty looks like. Not romantic, not picturesque. Brutal and ordinary. That was in Red Clay Fields, Maxton, North Carolina, dawn, 1920s. And 18-year-old Malcolm sweeps floors. He watches the store owner carefully, how he prices things, how he counts change, how he moves goods from the back room to the shelf. Malcolm is not just working, he is studying. He was an interesting boy.
According to historian Dr. Mark Levinson, author, The Box, he didn't go to college. He couldn't afford it. But McLean had a mind like a trap. He watched how every system worked and immediately started thinking, how could this be done faster, cheaper, better? Malcolm, at 21, drives a second-hand truck hauling cotton for a tobacco company. He pulls into a busy port, Wilmington, North Carolina. He parks in a long line of trucks, engines idling, waiting hours to be unloaded. He drums his fingers on the steering wheel. He watches longshoremen carry bales, one at a time, from truck bed to dock to ship's hold. Slow, inefficient, maddening. He would later say that day changed everything. He sat in that truck for hours wondering, losing money with every minute, and he had a thought so simple it seemed absurd. What if you didn't unload the truck at all? What if you just put the whole truck on the ship? In 1934, loading a single cargo ship took days. Longshoremen loaded 1.7 tons per man-hour. Breakage and theft consumed up to 15% of all cargo. Within 10 years, McLean Trucking became one of the largest carriers in the American Southeast. He did it by understanding something other men didn't. A truck sitting still is a truck losing money. Every minute mattered. Malcolm's small trucking operation has grown. He is relentless, negotiating contracts personally, sleeping in truck stops, pressuring state legislatures to allow wider loads on highways. He is charming when he needs to be, ruthless when he has to be. Professor Daniel Yergin, the author of Book the Prize, said, McLean had an almost physical revulsion to waste. Idle assets were a personal affront. He would calculate the cost per mile of every route, every driver, every load. He ran his trucking company like a precision machine. The trucking industry was heavily regulated. The Interstate Commerce Commission told companies what they could haul, what they could charge, what routes they could run. McLean fought these restrictions constantly. He was building not just a company, but a vision of commerce the government hadn't yet imagined. Malcolm sits across from a U.S. senator. He is not intimidated. He lays out maps, charts, lobbying for interstate trucking deregulation. He loses this fight, and the next one. He is undeterred. Malcolm paces before a group of investors. On the chalkboard behind him, a crude sketch. A ship, and on its deck, large metal boxes. Rectangles. Some men look confused. One stifles a laugh. He didn't bother because he knew what he wanted. The shipping economist, Dr. Rose George, who wrote book 90% of Everything, said, the idea of containerization wasn't new. Others had tried variations, but McLean was the first to see the full system, the box, the crane, the ship, the truck, the rail car, as one integrated machine. He didn't think just about the box only. he thought about everything the box would touch. Think for a minute, in those age who could link all this in one service. To finance his vision, McLean made a decision that shocked everyone in the trucking industry. He sold McLean Trucking, the empire he had spent 20 years building, for $6 million. Then he took on $42 million in debt to buy Pan Atlantic Steamship Company. At 42, sits across a long mahogany table from bankers. He wants to borrow $42 million, a large sum. He wants to buy a struggling shipping company. The banker's shocked. This man is a trucker. What does he know about ships? It was one of the most audacious leveraged buyouts in American history, before the term even existed. He walked away from certain prosperity to chase something that had never been done before. Most businessmen would have played it safe. McLean doubled down. The Ideal X sailed from Newark to Houston on April 26, 1956. It carried 58 containers. The longshoreman on the dock knew exactly what it meant. If this worked, the world of cargo handling would never be the same. A converted tanker, the Ideal X, sits at the dock. On its reinforced deck, 58 aluminum containers, each 33 feet long. They look strange, out of place, almost silly. A crowd of longshoremen watches. Some of them are nervous. This machine, if it works, threatens their way of life. Malcolm stands at the rail. He is outwardly calm. Inside, he has bet everything. Loading the Ideal X cost 16 cents per ton. Traditional cargo handling cost $5.83 per ton. McLean had achieved a 97% reduction in loading costs. McLean negotiated, compromised, and outmaneuvered. He agreed to pay into union funds, even for containers, a levy per ton, essentially paying men not to oppose the technology that made them obsolete. It was expensive. It was pragmatic. It was McLean. These containers are killing jobs. Every box that goes on a ship is a man who doesn't go to work in the morning. We will fight this. And they did fight. Strikes, work slowdowns, political pressure. McLean's expansion was not triumphant. It was a war. McLean understood that the container was only as good as the system around it. He invested in specialized cranes, massive gantry cranes that lifted entire containers off ships in minutes. He built new terminals. He redesigned ports. He wasn't just shipping goods. He was redesigning infrastructure. The man was slowly becoming unstoppable. Malcolm's renamed company, Sealand Service. The company is expanding. Container ships now run between the U.S. East Coast and Puerto Rico, then up and down the coast. But the ports are the problem. You can't containerize a ship if the port still moves cargo by hand. James Costas, a retired Port of Newark, said, "When McLean came to our terminal, he didn't ask what we could do. He told us what we were going to do. He redesigned the entire facility on paper during a single site visit. We thought he was crazy. He was right." By 1965, the Vietnam War was escalating. The U.S. military has a catastrophic problem. Mounting supplies are rotting on the docks of Saigon. Theft is rampant. Scheduling is chaos. Soldiers are waiting weeks for equipment. A general studies a report. Someone has circled the name Sealand Service. The U.S. military was hemorrhaging money and material in Vietnam. Someone in the Pentagon remembered McLean. They called him. He flew to Saigon, and in that chaos, he saw a huge opportunity. New cranes rise from the jungle. Container terminals being built. Sealand ships arriving with military supplies locked tight in steel boxes. The Vietnam contract transformed Sealand, but it also revealed the next frontier, the backhaul. Ships coming from Vietnam were empty. McLean asked one question: who's near Vietnam that wants to sell things to America? The answer is found: Japan. Sealand's Vietnam to Japan container routes launched the era of trans-Pacific trade. The global supply chain as we know it was born. Before containers, we lost maybe 10 to 15% of supplies to theft or damage. After Sealand took over the Cam Ranh Bay runs, it dropped to almost nothing. Those boxes were the most effective anti-theft device the military ever deployed.
Malcolm McLean, 56, shakes hands with corporate executives. He has just sold Sealand to R.J. Reynolds for $530 million, then the largest acquisition in American business history.
McLean took his money and watched from the sidelines as the company he built became a division of a tobacco conglomerate. Reynolds didn't understand shipping. They didn't understand McLean's obsessive logic. They made it worse. And McLean, watching from the outside, couldn't stand it. The econ ships were brilliant on paper. Massive scale would reduce the cost per container dramatically. But McLean made a bet on fuel prices staying high and on global trade routes staying predictable. He was wrong on both. McLean, 65, is back. He has raised capital and purchased United States Lines, a struggling shipping company. He has a new vision, the largest container ships ever built. Econ ships, massive, slow, fuel efficient. Papers are spread across the table. Debt documents, foreclosure notices. McLean sits at the head of the table, older now, his face unreadable.
In 1986, United States Lines filed for bankruptcy, one of the largest shipping bankruptcies in American history. McLean had lost nearly everything. A man who had once revolutionized global trade was at 73, starting over. He stares out the window at the harbor. The water is flat. The cranes are still. Close associate, Robert Ferris, former Sealand executive, said, "I asked him once after the bankruptcy if he regretted it. He looked at me like I'd asked a stupid question. He said, the econ ship was right. The timing was wrong. Those are two very different failures." He was already thinking about the next move. The largest port in the world. Thousands of containers move in perfect mechanical choreography. Cranes lift boxes the size of houses. Ships the length of city blocks arrive and depart on schedules more precise than airlines. Today, 90% of the world's trade travels by container. Over 800 million containers are shipped annually. The global shipping industry generates $14 trillion in economic activity. McLean's 1956 box, 16 cents per ton. Today's system, 1 cent per ton equivalent. According to INT Museum of American History, Washington, D.C. A young curator places a small aluminum container, a model, into a display case. The placard reads, "The box that changed the world." Economist Dr. Paul Krugman, Nobel Prize in Economics 2008, said, "Containerization did more for globalization than all the trade agreements ever signed. McLean's insight, reduce friction, reduce waste, standardize everything, became the operating principle of the modern economy."
Historian Dr. Mark Levinson, author The Box. He was not a likable man. He was demanding, impatient, sometimes ruthless. He didn't suffer fools. But he saw something no one else did, and he never stopped believing in it. Even when he was bankrupt. Even when everyone said he was wrong. Malcolm McLean never won a Nobel Prize. He was never elected to office. He was barely known outside the shipping industry. But every product you bought this week, your phone, your coffee, your clothes, traveled in his box. Shanghai, Singapore, Los Angeles, Hamburg, Durban, Mumbai, Santos, Busan. Everywhere, the same steel boxes, the same system, the same idea born in a red clay county in North Carolina, in the mind of a farmer's son who watched men carry cotton bales one at a time and thought, there has to be a better way. By the time Malcolm McLean died in 2001 at the age of 87, the world he had built was so ubiquitous that no one noticed it anymore. That was, perhaps, the truest measure of his achievement. He didn't just change how cargo moves. He changed the world itself.